we must dwell. Get your hustle on, ring that wealth bell. From the dirt to the gold, every story's untold. Cashflow, Savannah, where ambition takes hold. Started with $1, stretched it to a mile. Every setback just a set.
Welcome to Cashflow Savannah. No, it's an honor to be of service to this town. And, we're talking about a lot of things that apply nationwide, though, not just here in Savannah. And today we have a great topic. As property managers, we're knee deep in real estate. There's really no better way to know what's going on in the market than being to property management. You see what's selling, what's transacting, how rents are going, how properties are maintained. It's a whole bag of necessity.
Well, I know things aren't selling. I can tell you that as a property manager.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. This real estate market has been quite a boon for the property management side. I'm assuming we're not the only ones, but yes, we get calls almost every day. My house isn't selling. Can you rent it?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
That's exactly what we're seeing a ton. I mean, just a couple weeks, this past couple weeks has been like, I think 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, it's
Hey,
been
I have the house for sale. It's not selling. Can we rent?
it's been a lot. And you know what? I don't like to sell real estate. I'm good with that. I tell people all the time, I'm like, the best thing you can do is not sell in this market because things haven't gone down, but they're definitely kind of stagnant as far as price wise. Well, what if we put a tenant inside that home for 2 or 3 years? They're going to be able to sell it later for a lot more. So really, there's no loss. And I've had a lot of people say, yeah, as long as my mortgage is covered, I can afford to get a new place. And people are by and large good. So I'm really proud of what we're doing here. But we've had a similar issue come up in multiple properties recently. And I thought it would be a great topic for today's discussion. I also like this topic because I don't think people really talk about issues like this. And that's what we're really committed to doing on this show is really talking about the stuff that is kind of random and not talked about. But we've had a big issue at one of our duplexes. And Chandler, you're the heavy. I don't want to talk like it's all been my work, but just give us a description of what kind of happened out of nowhere in a already rehabbed unit. This is an older home. I guess we don't know the age of it, but it's definitely,
It's older.
yeah, it's older. Talk about what's going on there.
So basically I don't know, when we first got into it, they were dealing with some foundation issues. We could see where they had tried to fix something, but it seemed fixed, so we just put flooring right over it. But now a little bit further down where previous piece was fixed is now it looks like it's collapsing in. So I don't know we don't really know if water's getting under there. It looked pretty dry under there. But yeah, I mean, it's just a foundation issue. We don't really know what's causing it or anything.
Well, and it has been very wet. I've never seen such a wet summer in Savannah than 2025. It has been raining a lot. And I have to say, we're seeing a lot of foundation issues pop up because of the rain. And it is important to address it. So I can think of 3 properties actually recently, one in Richmond Hill, one and 2 in Savannah, where foundation issues have kind of come out of nowhere. It affects the tenants. So it affects the owner because obviously they're going to have to pay for that. And like this property that we're speaking about now, this owner had already rehabbed the home. It is in great shape. The tenants moved in, and then all of a sudden they start calling, we got a foundation issue. How exactly has it affected the tenant's stay?
The only thing that it's like affecting really is like the door, hard to open and close the door into the bedroom. That's like there is there's a big warp like in the bedroom. Like it definitely sucks. Like I feel bad. Yeah, it's kind of like it's a warped room kind of.
Yeah. This is a pier and beam house. So the home is up on some piers and beams, which is just very common. It's not on a slab. So that is what we're referring to is you've got a crawl space underneath and you have wood. And sometimes if the home isn't maintained or if water gets under there, I mean, there are all different reasons. The foundation the house swells and shrinks with the weather. I'm not sure how many people are aware of that. And for that reason alone, I'm huge on wood floors. In my own portfolio, I am done with LVP. I'm never going to use it again. I'm only going to do wood or I'm going to do tile because I view both of those as very permanent and long term. And wood I like especially because like I said, it will grow and swell with the home and you just don't see so many flooring issues. But in this case, we rehabbed it for the owner. Of course, they're always wanting something affordable, which LVP counts. I'm not here to hate on LVP, but I actually don't care for it personally. The flooring has kind of, I don't know how you say it's up. It's like a triangle floor, and that affects the LVP on top of it. So the tenant does have a little bit of a ridge that they're having to deal with, and they're frustrated. They have been calling the office quite frequently about this.
No, yeah, and especially with these older homes, I don't even know the older homes under the wood floor. There's it's almost like another piece of wood floor. It's not plywood, but just what they used back in the day. So that is actually kind of cracked and causes the triangle. But yeah, and that causes the floor to kind of pop up as well.
Well, in one of my homes, you've been in it, but it's a duplex that I own. We had actually termite cause the same issue. So there's always different reasons. But for that property in particular, water was underneath, which I did realize. But what I didn't realize was that that's going to bring in the termites because once the wood gets wet, it starts to rot, and that's what attracts termites. I was being cheap. I didn't pay for termite bond and termite inspection and termite treatment every year. So by the time I realized it, Kevin Andrews told me, he was on our podcast a while back. He said, Julie, the termite holes at your place are so big. He goes, I could put my arm in them. And I was like, so in that situation, it was a termite issue that caused the change. The one we're talking about today, we don't know. Another one that I personally have in Richmond Hill, it's definitely caused by water. There's been water sitting under the home. So again, as the homeowner, if you can get ahead of these things and realize like there's water underneath my pier and beam home, get it out. If you can get it out, your foundation should be fine. But if it gets left alone, you're going to see some warping. And so that's where it's just really important to stay on top of things like this.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in Savannah. Like, it seems like all the homes, basically the homes are just held up by two cinder blocks and some wood. That's kind of what they look like. That's what it looks like when you look under there. It's like, dang, it's just two
Right.
cinder blocks running throughout the entire home. So
Well,
yeah, I guess this, before buying as well, just understand like
right.
what you're getting into.
That's right. And we have a lot of great foundations that we deal with, but an older home is going to kind of move and shift a little bit with the ground too. So that's, it's kind of very common, but at the same time, you just want to make sure there's no issue. I
Yeah.
had an issue recently with a quadplex I had under contract for some clients. I love this building and it's like 135 years old. Okay. You're going to expect some shifting. There are always going to be some issues, but this is on like one of the most beautiful streets in Savannah. Everything around it is luxury. Like I just felt like it was such a great buy for my buyer. And I'm used to foundation issues. Typically you can walk through a home and if you feel a soft spot or if you feel it, you can kind of tell there's a slope or something. Those are indications of a foundation issue. And so, of course, my job as the agent, as the property manager, I'm always going, hey, we got to look into this before you buy it. Just know what you're buying. I didn't detect any of this in this quadplex. Well, then we got to the inspection, which is so important. You always want to inspect your property. And the inspector came out with a photo and he said, this is a large building. It's a quad, pier and beam. It's up on stilts, which is good. You want water to run under it, not against it. And he said a quarter of this house is being held up by half of a brick. And he showed us the photo and we were just like, wow. So this home actually hasn't shifted, but it definitely needs some jacks underneath to kind of prop it up. So there are all kind of foundation issues out there.
Yeah, that's a mess to deal with too. You just got to, I would almost just say beware and probably eventually on the line you'll have to fix it. I feel like every house that I've seen that has that kind of foundation has always had some sort of
It's important to get a pro in there. And I know people like one of the guys that we manage for, he's done a lot of the jacks himself. It sounds really scary, but I've seen quotes from 3 to 8,000 and then all the way up to like 20,000. So it just depends on the size of the building, how much is missing, but I can't say enough. The most important thing is to get, like for this building, get it jacked up and supported before anything cracks or bends because right now
Yeah.
it's still in great shape. Now the floors are all wood and I think that's a big part of it.
Just half a brick is holding up.
It's half of one brick. So it was pillars of like blocks and then there's a brick on top of the pillars and then the big long slab, not the slab, the pier is sitting on top of the brick, but the brick has since cut in half. So it's half of a brick. It's crazy.
A mighty brick right there.
It is.
I trust in that brick.
Unfortunately, that half brick, it saved the building, but it killed my sale because my clients were planning on this big rehab and they weren't expecting the foundation issues. And the seller unfortunately bought the home in the last 2 to 3 years and he can't afford to come down on price to cover the foundation repairs. So it has killed the sale, unfortunately. I'm so sad because it's a great property, but the math has to work for the buyer and it doesn't work once the foundation issues came in.
That's the key is if the numbers don't work, you just have to move on, I guess. Because some people just get so scared of foundation issue, but like just make the numbers once you fix it and you'll be good to go. I'm not too, some people are so scared of foundation issues. And I know you're not. You're like, heck yeah, that's ideal for me.
A foundation issue equals great price for me to buy it at. I want a discount and I want that discount to be significantly more than it's going to cost me to repair. But the house in Richmond Hill I'm referencing, I got a killer discount on that. I got it for $97,000, which is not easy to do in Richmond Hill. And it's
Yeah.
because I was so scared of the foundation issues and it's been renting for years. I'm just now to where I'm going to fix it. I was like, I don't really think that tenants care if the dining room slopes a little bit. And they did it. We never had one complaint about that foundation until we did, which means
Yeah.
now I've got to fix it.
I think even if you get another person in there, I don't think they would say anything because that one's kind of. I know which house you're talking about. It's not that bad. It's not really that bad at all.
It really doesn't affect livability, but I had a couple people go through it with me and they said, it's time, you need to fix it. The biggest issue I have to say is the water. And
Yeah.
so I've got to address the water. I'm just going to address everything at once. I'm going to put in a sub pump. For those of you not familiar, this is very common in Savannah. They put in what's called a sub pump. It's actually not too expensive. And I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it basically lives under the home and it's if there's water, it will pump it out. Now, the on off mechanism, I don't really know. I've never been
Yeah.
super involved, but we're probably gonna have to look into that for this other property that we're managing.
Yeah. That's because the key triggers I would say would be what? Termites, water under the house. Because that was the first thing I looked for.
Right.
But, all right, let me see if there's water getting under the house. Honestly, there's no water under the house. And then I stuck a flashlight under there and I could see one like running right through the middle of the house. Like the wood side is just completely sitting
Okay.
on.
So it's just a failure of probably one board. And this, the quotes we've gotten on it, they're not as bad as like the quad, right? Like this is a duplex. It's a little smaller in size. And so the owner is working to repair it now, or we're working to repair it for the owner. So I want to talk about the tenant, okay? We've had obviously many tenant issues. And I looked up the law on this. I think it's important for us to understand, when you're managing a property, you have a tenant inside, something breaks, what are your requirements as the property owner, as the property manager? So, of course, the tenant is frustrated. They do have a ridge in their bedroom. It's hard to close the door. I think you said the closet, like the floor of the closet is kind of difficult. But in your opinion, Chandler, is the home habitable? Is it so bad that the tenant has to move out, or is it something they can suffer through?
The only thing is you probably just have to sleep with the door open. I just wouldn't want to closing and open the door is probably very difficult. I think that's probably the biggest issue with this tenant. They just want to close the door and have some privacy.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, but yeah, I get it. But I think it's still habitable. It's still do everything else, just not really.
In my opinion, a foundation issue, at least the one we're speaking of, okay, there are all kind of foundation issues, but this in particular, where there's a ridge in one room, one bedroom, the door is hard to close. We have looked into it and we do not find it to be uninhabitable. We're here for the tenant. We're trying to fix it quickly, but you are not going to fix a foundation issue in 5 minutes. It's going to take the right guy, the right time period. Like they're going to have to put in some jacks. It's absolutely going to take a week at least. So, what the state law says for Georgia is that if it's legally uninhabitable, we do need to refund for the days where the tenant could not live there. For example, we had one other property, long story, but the power was turned off by the power company and they flat out refused to turn it back on until we pulled more permits. It was one of these things that we did not see coming. We had no idea there were no permits pulled when we took over management. It's such a long story. But yes, that tenant had no electricity whatsoever. That home was uninhabitable and they did have the right to leave or get a refund. And we absolutely let them out of their lease. I mean, it was not their fault. We had another one recently where the air conditioner was out for over a week. It was, well, we talked about it on this podcast, but I mean, it was over 100 degrees every day. The heat was just off the chain.
Yeah.
That house was uninhabitable. They got a refund. They did not leave their lease because we got it fixed. But, things like that, like in the state of Georgia, if it's habitable, is it annoying? Yes. But is it habitable? Yes. So in this case, we are choosing to leave the tenant inside. They aren't getting a refund, but we are fixing it with them inside.
Yeah, it's a tough situation because you feel for the tenants. Like I'm very refund. I give refund. I like giving refunds. Like just kind of how I am. Some people are different about it. Yeah, just kind of stick your ground. I guess know the laws kind of around it.
Yeah.
So because most people probably, if you don't know, you would just give them a refund or let them out. But yeah, you can absolutely keep them in.
Yeah, just for context, this is a long-term rental guest. This is not a short-term rental guest. It's just tough. It's just a really tough situation. We kind of leave it up to the owner of the property, how they want to do that. But the nice thing about foundation issues is a lot of it's done outside. So we're not disturbing the tenant. We've sent several guys over to crawl underneath and look inside and they're making a plan. And for the most part, they don't have to come in. But later for finishing, obviously we're going to have to step in and bother them them, but we've been doing our best to keep them comfortable.
Yeah, it seems like they're at work during the day, so hopefully we can get in, squeeze in while they're at work, fix it up real quick. Inside will be easy to fix up. It's just the outside crawl space.
I have to say, as property managers, we want to be quick too. We don't want the tenant upset. We don't want them calling and being frustrated. Like that's a negative for us for sure. So we're very motivated. But I tell you what, foundation guys do not grow on trees. And it has been, the first guy that came in, it just wasn't something he was interested in doing. So we had to find guy number two. And these things take time. So we've actually been very communicative with the tenant, like, please give us some grace here. We're trying, but it's not as simple as snapping our fingers and having a guy come put a jack under the house, in an hour. So
and the issue with foundation people too is the quotes are you're going to get a $600 quote,
yes.
and then you'll get another guy and it's $25,000. And you're like, you're trying to get another guy and he gives you something. You're like, I don't know which one to choose, who's right, who's wrong. That's why I think you kind of just got to go with, I kind of trust the people that give you a recommendation, kind of go with that. This issue is the contractor that I trust. He's like, I don't mess with foundation issues,
Right.
which I get it's very liable for him down the road. If something else happens, it's hard for him to kind of come in and say, yeah, that's not my issue.
No, it's true. But you're right. Reputation is huge. And we see it all the time. You get 3 or 4 quotes on the same property and they're wildly different. I've got this other one under contract with a client and the client keeps saying, why are the quotes so different? And I'm just like, I have no idea. But I see it all the time where investors, they always want the cheapest quote. They go, oh, which one is the cheapest? Okay, that one. But there have been several situations where I'm just like, I didn't really get a good feeling. Let's talk about foundation issues. On this quad, we had 3 quotes on the foundation. And the guy that came in cheapest, he flat out told me over the phone, I'm a large guy. I haven't gotten under there myself, but I keep sending different guys and they keep bringing more info. And he kept changing his quote. And he was cheaper by a mile, but I kept going, okay, I was telling the client, okay, it's the client's choice, obviously, but I'm going, hey, this guy is absolutely the cheapest, but he also has not seen it himself. He's sending in guys. I don't know how talented those guys are. So I really felt more comfortable with these other 2 guys who they themselves are licensed foundation guys and they themselves had crawled under and checked on it. You want the guy that really knows what they're looking at to give the quote, not the guy looking at photos. So
I would always say go with the licensed foundation guy. They're probably going to be super expensive. I'm sure those 2 quotes that you're talking about were probably pretty hefty. I think it'll get done right the first time. Then they'll come back and be like, oh,
exactly. It's so much better to spend more, even if it's 20-30% more, and it be done forever. And a lot of these guys that are licensed, they'll guarantee their work, and that's a big deal. I have a triplex under contract right now, and there was a pretty good sized crack in the brick. And they, our inspectors really help us with this. That's a big deal. The inspector pointed out, he said, you've got a foundation issue. And I hadn't even noticed the crack in the brick. And he goes, there's so much water under the home, I can't even get there because of the rain. So actually during the due diligence period, we pumped out the water and then sent in 3 different foundation guys. And this one guy, they all agreed that the block of the duplex is a block duplex with a brick facade. And they all said the foundation is solid. It's just cosmetic that the brick is splitting. And I thought that was so interesting. So they all gave quotes on getting the water out, keeping the water out, putting in a sub pump, and then also putting that brick back together. But I never thought about that before. But when you see bricks separating and he said, once you're over half an inch between the brick, he said, you've probably got a foundation issue. Luckily, he was wrong in this case, but I was very nervous.
Was the crack in that brick half an inch or was it was a pretty big one?
That's what the inspector was using as a metric. And I didn't even catch it. I had been all over that property for my client. And sure enough, you looked up high and it started at the kitchen window and it went all the way up to the roof. And you could see where it kind of trailed like that. And he said, I measured it. And he said, you got to address that. So luckily we got a quote for getting the water out and then they're going to somehow tack the brick back together and just, seal it or whatever. What a relief. I thought, oh no, I don't need foundation issues to kill another deal.
No, that's a nice triplex. You would never think that one. It looks solid, like it looks like a solid. Sometimes you can tell, like, oh, this one's not too solid, but that one looked solid. So
yes, I'm very proud of this deal because this client and I have been working together for a while, just trying to find the right thing. And I kept saying, just hang on, just trust me. I didn't like some of the other ones, just not, we're talking numbers. Okay. Yeah. And this person had a very specific, desire in mind for multifamily. And this triplex hit day 1. And I texted this client. I said, please, I beg you, please, this is it. And we saw it that day. We offered that night and we got under contract and we just negotiated a price reduction because of the water, which is deserved, and 3 backup offers. My client is so thankful and everyone's mad because we got in there quickly. But, I knew exactly what they wanted. I knew the kind of the walkability factor and they want it all brick, stuff like that. I'm super excited for the deal. And still we see some foundation issues, but it's okay. It's going to be handled.
Dallas is good. I like it. The location's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's a great location. Props to that owner for I think a lot of people get so and this is going completely off topic. Like, oh, I gotta find a deal and they gotta find it in the next week or two. And you just gotta be patient. Like deal finding is not easy. Be patient. The one it'll eventually pop up, but it might take 3 months. I don't know how long they were looking.
Along at least probably 6 months. But
Yeah.
I'm going to poorly quote Warren Buffett here, but Warren Buffett says sometimes the best thing an investor can do is sit on their hands. And that's absolutely true. Like in real estate, you have to know exactly what you want and you just have to wait for it to hit. You can't, like you just said, Chandler, you just can't go after every little thing, just because you want to buy something. Now,
Yeah.
if you're getting towards the end of the year and you need to make a purchase, that might speed things up a bit. But I was thrilled that my client trusted me enough to sit on their hands, even though they didn't want to. And then when it came up, they went after it. And I'm so proud of the deal. I love closing deals like that. But that's why it's so important to work with professionals that really understand real estate investing. I've talked to a million people, oh, yeah, I mess with short term rentals. And then they don't even know the laws around town, and it's like just because you've sold a short term rental in the past does not mean you understand selling short-term rentals. Like it's just, anyway, we've talked about that many times on the show, but you have to really understand the license law before you even touch anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's what I've been seeing a lot. It's been frustrating to me, at least, is people getting in here and they think they're experts at short-term rentals and long-term rentals. And real estate is it's not that easy. It's not, it sounds easy, but it's not. Like finding the deal is the hardest thing you can do. Like finding the deal is the hardest thing in my opinion. And some people just need to have patience. The fun thing about it is like if it does take 6 months and then you finally find that deal, it's so much fun.
It's right. It's so exciting. Well, and just last night we got another 20,000 off of this triplex. And I mean, it's gone from a solid deal to a really good deal.
Really, yeah,
And
20,000.
yeah, I'm very proud of that. Like we know our stuff. We got the quotes done during the due diligence period, and it's a solid buy for a client. And we have a similar situation, like I was saying, there's water underneath it, which can cause foundation issues. Okay, we're talking foundation issues. I took down a deal with a client in Pooler a year or two ago, and same thing on the inspection report, we found some foundation issues, and I think it was about a $17,000 job. Honestly, it was some movement that had happened and then poor workmanship on top of it. So I don't want to just freak anyone out with like, oh, foundation issues are $17,000. They can be, but in this case, the foundation issue was about $5,000 or $6,000, and then having to redo, the underside and the subfloor and the flooring was very expensive. So in that case, my buyer wanted it. The seller really needed to sell. It was one of those situations where the seller was a flipper and he was using hard money and it was getting more expensive every day. And so I walked in during the due diligence period as his agent and I said, we have foundation issues here. Here are all the facts. And here's a quote from a licensed foundation specialist who's awesome, this guy, Logan. And so they actually they agreed to cut a check at closing. So my buyer paid and closed. And let's say it was $200,000, whatever. They kept 17,134.85 or whatever the exact amount was for that foundation repair specialist. The lawyer cut a check from the seller's proceeds to that exact amount to that licensed repairman. When I showed up to closing, he handed me the check as the agent. And it was, like I said, it wasn't in my name. It was to that guy. And so I supervised it for my client. My client lives in North Carolina. First thing we did was greenlight those foundation repairs. And as soon as the gentleman finished, I walked over, I checked everything. He showed me all the photos. I looked under, I walked the house. I handed him the check. My client was thrilled. The seller was thrilled. It all worked out. So the seller did pay for the foundation issues, but he also was able to get out of the deal. And it was a win-win. So use that to your advantage to go, oh no, there's foundation issues. I need a discount and you're going to have to pay for the repair. It's okay. It's all handleable. There's no perfect house for sure. But
Yeah.
that house is now cash flowing very well for that buyer. He's always looking for another one. And I'm proud of it. It worked out.
I'm trying to think of, do I know the house?
I don't know. I don't think so. It's a large one in Pooler that was actually made into a short-term rental. He put in a volleyball court.
Oh,
I
really?
told you about it, but I don't think you got to see it. But I really liked that house as well.
Cool.
Again, it was a sophisticated buyer. He expected there to be some issues, didn't expect it to be that big. But the fact that the issues were covered by the seller, like he ended up with, a really solid foundation and new flooring out of it. So it wasn't too big of a deal.
So I want to ask, what's the next thing that's happening in the real estate market?
What's the next thing that's
As
happening
we
in the real
as we
estate
head
market?
into the fall, so things start slowing down in the fall and the winter. What's next? What do you
Short-term
see
rental.
what's coming up?
We're entering into short-term rental season, Chandler. Giddy up. Short-term rental season.
You talking about people buying, or you just talking about people?
Nope, people are about to start buying. Well, first of all, fall and winter in Savannah, amazing. So we're definitely gonna have more travelers because it's the heat is kind of breaking. So yes, short-term rental season in that we're gonna have a lot of tourism problem. That's great. But for buyers, we do see a lot of the buying on towards the end of the year for short-term rentals. So I'm ready. I actually have a lot of deals locked and loaded. I'm about to start filming in some of those just to start pushing them out. But yep, we're already seeing buying pick up here in Savannah, and that's been great. It was amazing last week. I think an offer a day I wrote last week. So buying has started to pick up, and I'm starting to see more urgency in buyers, especially on the islands. We have a lot of people wanting a short-term rental on the outskirts, and I'm seeing that buying pick up significantly recently. So like I said, we're moving into short-term rental season. So anyway, the buy side is definitely picking up, and people are starting to see the urgency.
So when you're giving advice on people buying short-term rentals, where you want them to buy, and like what are you telling them to buy?
Well, I tell them what you tell me to tell them, which is don't do it unless you do it really well.
Yeah,
And this is a great case in point, if you don't mind, if I just blabber for a moment. Speaking of short-term rentals,
Robert. All right.
Dave is on my team, and one of his clients, I think they're going to go after a place in Pooler, and it's 4 bedrooms with a pool, which is great. The neighborhood is, I'm going to say B minus, C plus, B minus, probably B minus.
I know where exactly it is already.
Pockets are fine, and pockets are like, oh, there's a lot of cars in the yard. I'm really excited. And I literally, my advice to this buyer and to Dave, which Dave knows short-term rentals, he doesn't really need me on this, but I was like, just don't, if you're going to do it well. And so I did the showing for them actually, and some issues with the pool. It looks like it needs a new liner. Like at the house, it takes money to make money. And with short-term rentals, especially, I cannot say enough. And I know you're the same, Chandler. If you're going to do it well. And that means you're going to have to invest cash, make the house nice. You don't want a regular short-term rental is not going to do very well anymore. It has to actually be well done. Now, the bones of this house are killer. It has a bar. It has like, I don't know how you say it. It has like this extra bonus room with a bar in it. And it has all this stuff for a keg, tubing and pool,
Yeah.
right? Okay. It has a whole bar area, and it has an outdoor pool with a fire pit. It doesn't have a hot tub. The pool definitely needs some work. Now, the bedrooms are a little small. So I think this would probably work best as a short-term rental play, because I don't think the house is going to be overly desirable to a home buyer because of the size of the bedrooms. But a short-term rental guest isn't going to care as long as you get a queen bed in there or whatever size bed you want. The guests don't care if the bedside tables are this wide versus this wide. I mean, they're not going to be there forever. So I'm kind of excited, but that was my advice. I'm like, do it. The bones are there, but you're going to have to invest money. So what we're trying to do is actually flip their loan product to a second home purchase. These guys do live over 4 hours. They live in Atlanta, so they're 4 hours away exactly. My understanding of the law, I'm not an attorney, but as long as you're over 2 hours away from the location, you can buy a short-term rental as a second home. And these people do qualify. So I'm like, let's save your cash. Let's buy with 10% down instead of 20, which they were going to do a conventional loan. And then that saves cash for putting it into the house and making it really spectacular, because that's the only way a short-term rental is going to work, is if it's just really well done.
Yeah, you have to have cash because you're opening a hospitality business.
Right.
And I've never seen a hospitality business go, yeah, we're going to open up the house and then not make it like cool or good. So, like you said, you have to be an expert in this space now. I think the wannabes kind of got washed out, and the experts are the ones that are surviving in this market, in the short-term rental market, at least. What's your thoughts on Pooler as a short-term rental market? Who y'all are catering to?
Pooler's great. The ones that we have there and manage are always full. I mean, very rarely vacant. And they've instituted licensure, which you and I are not opposed to. I am okay with short-term rental regulations. I always follow the law. I always will follow the law. I'm not interested in forcing anything. I think Pooler's a great market, and especially for families. I like the size of the home. I like the location. It's close to 95. It's close to 16. We have all the industry out in Pooler, which is a big draw. You're 30 minutes from the Hyundai plant. I think Pooler's a great market. I think this is kind of a unicorn as long as they do it right. The one caveat I want to say is I started in short-term rentals in my own portfolio in 2017, and most people didn't even know what Airbnb was then. Okay, I know it's hard to probably picture that, but back then I was able to get houses to good, and then I would furnish them and they would rent just because there was no other option. And then I would put money in as the years went by, and I had it. I really didn't have a lot of money. I was a very new investor. I kept running out. And so I'm the first to admit that my first furnished rentals were just okay. They still made tons of money, but I also kept trying to upgrade the furniture or whatever. But in this market, you cannot get away with that. You have to go from day one. It needs to be fantastic. Day one, day two, day 60, day 298. The market has shifted.
The supply for short-term rentals has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
It's,
We're seeing it go back down though.
well, yeah, a lot of people have dropped,
Right.
but I still think it still grew at like 12% this year, supply-wise. Like it was still, dang, supply is still growing in short-term rentals. People are still, I mean, there are some good returns you can get, but like you said, you have to do it right.
Do it right. Do
So
it right, you're going to do fine. And if you do it poorly, you're not going to do well at all.
yeah, because that's the thing about Savannah is like trying to find the right location
Mhm.
without having to, you're either spending $1 million to be in the historic district or on Tybee or wherever, or you get on the outskirts. Being on the outskirts is kind of scary to me because short-term rentals, to me, I think you're attracting a guest. And so like Pooler attracts a lot of the Hyundai plant workers.
Mhm.
So do you design it for those people or do you design it for vacation people, but who's vacationing the Pooler kind of thing? That's kind of the questions I would have.
And one issue we keep running into as well is that Air DNA is excellent. That's the gold standard,
I
but
hate it.
they don't account for a pool and amenities.
They
Okay.
don't.
And so that's where it's important to work with a property manager, work with an agent that really understands what those amenities are going to do in that market. And we can give you data on that, but that's because we're pros at it. Okay. And so this person walked in going, I'm going to buy something in the historic district for $450,000 and use it as a short-term rental. And I was like, okay, no, it's not going to happen. It's just not. Short-term rentals in the historic district start at $600,000 for a studio, with a license attached. So they've had to kind of revamp their strategy a little bit. And they came in, they told us day one, oh, I've studied the data, but that's where Dave and I came back and said, well, the data is a little different.
Yeah, I like AirDNA. I know you like it too, but I don't trust it. I'll say that.
You have to be careful. Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
do not trust those numbers because they don't know how to pull out the cleaning fee and the taxes. Basically, you get a payout from Airbnb, and that's what they're scraping. They're scraping the payouts, and that's like way like if you put in the cleaning fee and the taxes, like that makes everything way off. And so you just have to be careful. I like using our own numbers that we have within our company. I think those are the best numbers to use. That's why it's good to just call the property manager.
Yeah.
Or just go through Airbnb and see what things are rent nightly. You have to like do some you have to like dig, like really dig deep. Not just go look at AirDNA for 2 seconds. Oh, it's making this, and then like that's what it's going to make. I've seen that mistake, and it can be very costly.
Absolutely. Well, and
I
another
hate when people
interesting
do that.
thing to mention, and I can send you the video if you're in Chandler, but I did a showing for a different client the other day, 6-bedroom house on Wilmington. Perfect. Great place for a short-term rental. And I always have my phone out and I'm videoing the neighborhood because I believe the neighborhood matters just as much as the house. Okay. I'm really big on that. In the neighborhood. You know what the neighborhood was filled with, Chandler? All these yard signs. No short-term rentals in our neighborhood.
Oh,
We live
really?
here, no parties. We live here. No, it was so cringy. I can't even tell you. I was like, OMG. I'm like videoing every sign. And the whole time I was videoing the house for my client, I knew I was just like, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. I mean, it's palpable in that neighborhood that they hate this house. And I called the agent afterwards and I said, tell me what's going on with these signs. And he said, 2 years ago, we have this event that goes on Tybee. It's called Orange Crush. And it really doesn't affect us that much. Even though we manage on Tybee, if you know what you're doing, it's fine. We've never had a major issue. But 2 years ago, we had a particularly traumatic crowd situation out there. And anyway, apparently it got booked during that mess. And it was a complete rager. And the whole neighborhood has been up in arms over this one house ever since then. It was almost 2 years ago. And this poor agent was just like, he couldn't sell the house to save his life. He was like, please send an offer. And I'm thinking, I don't think it's coming, dude, but I'll tell him, but whew, it's
Yeah, I
tough.
would stay away from that. David Green was the first person that I'd never thought about it. We went to Bigger Pockets conference a few years back now. He mentioned that. He was like, there's 5 things. And he mentioned neighbors. And that was the first thing I'd ever heard. He was like, check your neighbors out before you buy the place. He's like, I bought a sweet short-term rental. And sure enough, I'm fighting with him right now about keeping this thing a short-term rental because it was a nice neighborhood. And but he's like, check your neighbors, check them out, check them out.
It's
That's why. Oh, I'm so torn. That's why I'm so nervous about. I'd rather just straight up invest in vacation town, just straight on the beach, like a Tybee, Hilton Head, St. Simons. I don't know. It's just already, it's been there forever. Panama City, like you don't have to really worry about anything. It's steady. I don't know. That's kind of where
Ivy.
that's been my pivot from the last few years. 3 years ago, I would have said buy a porta potty and you'll make $1 million with that too. I think that was the way it was. I was like, holy cow, you can do anything. But
I mean, we manage in a lot of neighborhoods though, Chandler, and we haven't had this ever, right? Like, I just feel like you got to buy the house, but it's got to be managed appropriately. And this
no, I
agent
agree.
was flat out, he was like, they don't have a clue what they're doing. And I was like, I know,
I agree.
I see the signs everywhere. Like, I'm in these failed short-term rentals all the time and I get it. So, buying it correctly, managing it correctly, had the property been well managed, the neighbors would not be so upset. I mean, heck, we had one, and unfortunately, this is years ago. I'm sure you remember this, but the dog that was in the short-term rental actually bit one of the neighbors. I felt terrible. That sucker's still there. We made it right. Like, anyway, it kind of worked out. Like, the stuff's going to happen. You just don't know. Even in the historic district, stuff's going to happen. But anyway, unfortunately, once it goes that far, it's really hard to come back.
Yeah, no, it's one little event that sometimes you don't have control over,
Yeah. Well, I know a lady that owns in Brunswick, which is a fairly common, it's pretty common to have resort stuff down there. I mean, Brunswick is a great market. And her neighbor literally filed a cease and desist on her, put up yard signs. Just one neighbor has just been a total thorn in her side, so it's almost like the market may or may not work out. And I told her, I said, I've never even seen this before. I felt so bad. But I think she might have some legal repercussions as well, because if you have a license, you're within your rights to be doing that, and they're hurting your business. I mean, I would explore that too. There's just two sides to everything, but it needs to be well managed.
Yeah, I agree with that. Weird market everywhere, all around. The short-term rentals coming up. All right, I like that.
We'll see.
Is that part of the tax strategy as well? With you get 100% depreciation with the new bill coming out and all that.
Yes, we should probably do a podcast episode about this, but President Trump, in his first term, had instituted these rules where you could do this rapid depreciation, and he's reinstituted. It had been dropping every year by 20%, but as of this year, he put it back in. So if you buy a short-term rental, like if you have a W-2 income and you buy a short-term rental, it's technically a business and not passive income play. You can rapid depreciate the house, not the land, but you can depreciate the house and save serious taxes. So we'll have to discuss this later. It's a really great.
Yeah, that'll be learning for me too. I hadn't really dug deep into that, but I've heard a lot of people like it.
Well, we'll plan to film that next time. It's just you and me. I think that'd be a great strategy to discuss because that's huge for buyers to have that, that tax savings is just massive.
High income earners, bring it on.
Bring it on. We're ready for you.
All right. Well, we appreciate y'all coming on today and listening. If you have any other topics, let us know. Let us know if you're even listening. We really appreciate that. We like when y'all let us know that y'all are listening to these episodes. And please like, comment, subscribe, share, let everybody know. And we will see y'all in the next episode. Thank you.
Next time. Use these problems to make money.
There you go. See ya.
Fields of green, seeds of split, I sow. Running numbers, watch the cash trees grow. Cashflow, Savannah, where the dreamers dwell. Get your hustle on, ring that wealth bell. From the dirt to the gold, every story's untold.